In this video, we'll create our own scene that uses the Google VR SDK. The demo scenes provided by Google are quite good, but they do a lot of stuff for you and they won't teach you how the whole thing works. So let's learn how to do that. We'll begin by creating a new empty scene. Go to the File menu and choose New Scene. Our empty scene contains two objects by default, the main camera and a directional light. To set up the scene to use Google VR, we're going to go into the Google VR folder to the Prefabs folder. We'll drag the GVR Viewer main prefab into the scene. A GVR Viewer is an object that basically manages the entire situation for virtual reality, whether or not VR is enabled or not, how to handle distortion correction, all the behind-the-scenes stuff. We also want to add a reticle to our camera, so we'll go into the UI folder and we'll drag the GVR reticle prefab onto the main camera, which will make it a child object of the main camera. Okay, let's test it out. Click the play button, and now we have our VR mode enabled. You can see the left camera and the right camera, and in fact, at runtime, a left and right camera is created for you by Unity, rather by using the Google VR stuff. To navigate in this scene, you would normally tilt your phone. However, that's difficult to do given that there's no easy way to access the accelerometer in Unity. We can fake it by using the Option key to look around, or Alt on Windows, so I'm looking around the scene. You can also roll your head by holding down the Control key, which is the same on both Mac and Windows, to roll left to right. Finally, let's look at how we can respond to the trigger being pressed. We're going to write a new script that listens for when the trigger has been tapped and simply logs information to the console when that happens. On our main camera, let's add a new component. We'll call it Trigger Listener. We'll create an edit, and then we'll open MonoDevelop. Here we are. To detect when the trigger has been pressed, we need to find our viewer object and then add a delegate to the onTrigger event. Doing that looks like this. First of all, we'll get the viewer object by saying var viewer equals find object of type GVR viewer. We're doing this in start, by the way, because we only have to do this once. Then we say viewer dot on trigger plus equals delegate, and we'll choose the second one to autocomplete. Now we're creating an inline function that gets run whenever the trigger is pressed. So here we'll just say debug.log trigger was pressed. Don't forget the semicolon on both this line and also the line after the semicolon here, because this is a statement as well as this inside here also being a statement, and both statements need a semicolon. We can remove the update function, it is needed, and now every time the trigger is pressed, this code will run. Let's test it. We'll go back to Unity, we'll play the game, we'll click on the screen, and there it is. Click, 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 and each time it logs. We'll be using this for our game to detect when the trigger was pressed and make that throw a ball. We now have the basics of working with VR space down. We can now build upon this to make more complicated interactions.